first up, we have a new Overframe card that is in the, I think it's called Utility Selection or something. Yeah, Utility Selection. I don't know what this means. I don't know what this is. I don't know when it comes out. I don't know when we get it. But I think it's Anan the Sword Mistress or something as a spell card. And it's called Ancient Secrets. Normal spell. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. Special summon a normal monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard in defense position. It must be level 4 or lower if from the deck. Or, if you control a normal monster card, you can apply one of these effects instead. Destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Destroy all spells and traps your opponent controls. Draw 2 cards. Or special summon a monster from either graveyard to your field. Okay. I mean... It is related to normal monsters. So that, you know, to begin with. But this is pretty much strictly better than Unexpected Die, I would say, because it first and foremost, it doesn't require your board to be empty, but it also does have bonus effects if you have, like, let's say you have, let's say you play a deck that combos with vanilla somehow, you know, like, I don't know, the plant deck from a few years ago, where you played Unexpected Die. Let's say you play both of them and you draw both of them, which previously, if you draw 2 Unexpected Dies, one of them is redundant unless you get like ashed on it. This one, if you draw 2 of them, well, you start with Unexpected Die, and then this is just Pot of Greed, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. You can play this with Primite, I suppose. Yeah, that is kind of crazy. I wonder, it specifically says if you control a normal monster card. I wonder what exactly that means ruling wise, or if the translation is just a little off, because this definitely means that if you have, for example, a Metal Foes Pendulum monster in your Pendulum Zone, this should work, because that is a normal monster card. But it's not a normal monster, because it's currently a Pendulum scale in your Pendulum Zone. But I think it is a normal monster card. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how it would work. Which would make this pretty insane in a deck like Metal Foes. Not that Metal Foes is meta anything, or would become meta if it had this, but it's basically straight up Pot of Greed, because you just activate a Metal Foes scale and then draw 2 cards. You know, easy as that. Or, I mean, sometimes in Metal Foes, you might even want to do the special one normal monster from your deck, just to get a body on the field to make like a link with. Of course, thank God Electromite is banned, but, you know, maybe a link material for Beyond the Pendulum or whatever. I'm not sure if Beyond the Pendulum needs effect monsters. Either way, that's interesting. I think that's not bad. Does it work with Paleos? asking for a friend, because a Paleo is a normal monster, but is it a normal monster card? Because it's technically still a trap card that is currently being treated as a normal monster. Does that make it a normal, like, you get the question, right? I'm not sure what the answer to that is. Not that it would change anything realistically, because you wouldn't play this in Paleo. I think it's way too slow. Also, this is another thing. Can you activate this if you have no legal target in your deck? Like, let's say in the example of Paleos, if I'm playing no normal monster in my Paleo deck, can I even activate this card while I control a Paleo? Even if, in theory, let's just assume it works. Or let's say, okay, other example. Let's say I'm playing Primite. Let's say I'm playing a Primite deck, but I'm only playing 1 vanilla. And I summon that vanilla with Lordly Load in order to draw 2 cards with this card. Can I activate this card? Because this is only the, if you control a normal monster card, you can apply one of these effects instead, is something that is checked on resolution. So when you activate the card, it's not clear that you're going to be able to do this. Because your opponent might remove your, like, let's say they might banish your normal monster when you activate it, and then this card would do nothing because you wouldn't have a target for it. And you also can't apply the other effect, right? So, interesting. Lots of it's funny because the card is not supposed to be that complicated ruling wise, but I feel like there's a couple of open questions here. But assuming, like, if it works in the best possible way, I think it's a pretty solid card that actually has some potential in future, like, Primite builds or other decks that work with vanillas, which they pop up every once in a while, you know, Fiendsmith stuff, where, you know, you can summon a Light Fiend with this, or if you already have access to your Light Fiend, like Primite Fiendsmith, you know, there's a lot of, especially Primite is the deck that probably can make use of this card the best. And here, same thing, Primite Blue Eyes, right? If you only have Blue Eyes in your deck, can you activate, like, let's say you have one Blue Eyes on the field, one Blue Eyes in the deck. Can you activate this card? Because you don't have a legal target to summon. Can you just activate it to draw 2 cards? I'm not sure. It depends on the exact wording, and we never really know with these translations, right? So I think that's something to be cautious for. We need to wait for confirmation on that. On the exact wording when it comes over to the TCG. But because it could also just be worded in a different way, like if you control a normal monster, you can activate one of these other effects instead, but I don't think that's not how it reads to me, which I think would imply that you need a legal target to be able to activate it, which would make it a significant bit worse depending on the deck. You know, that would make it significantly worse in Blue Eyes, for example, because you couldn't activate it with the Blue Eyes on the field and the other one in your deck, just as an example. Or in general with Primite, because Primites often only play one vanilla exactly. So if that one is on your field, you just can't activate this card if it works the way I think it does. Unless it's ruled differently and I'm just incorrect on this. But to me, it would make sense if it was ruled that way. But either way, interesting card to start with. I didn't expect to be talking about a normal monster support spell for this long, but here we are. Okay. Spatial Trunade. Beyond the Brave. So this one much sooner than the other card potentially, but Beyond the Brave is the second next core set after Chaos Origin. So looking at this, like probably like 2 to 3, maybe 4 months. I'm not sure exactly when. Normal spell card. You can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. Return up to 2 cards on the field to the hand. Then each player places cards from their hand on the bottom of the deck in any order equal to the number returned to their hand. Oh. Oh, okay. Wait, we got a Boardbreaker on our hands here that's got some legs. That's non-target too. That's good. I like it. I like it because it's less all in than something like a Lightning Storm or a Dark Ruler no more. It's less like, oh, if your deck is weak to this, I'm gonna win the game on the spot. It's more like, because it is only up to 2 cards that you answer with this when you're going second. So yes, you can pick like the 2 things that are most annoying to you, but you're not gonna, like, in most cases, you're not gonna completely destroy the entire board with it, right? But there's a couple of decks at the moment where this card would absolutely be phenomenal. And I think it does something that Lightning Storm was originally supposed to do, but in practice didn't really do. This answers trap decks in a similar way as it does like monster boards. Because Lightning Storm, I think that was the idea with Lightning Storm, is they wanted a board breaker that hits back row decks and like combo boards. Realistically, when's the last time you've seen a Lightning Storm really be used effectively for monsters? Like Lightning Storm is 99% of the time I feel like used for back row because it's so easy to play around, put your stuff in defense, and you know, people do that post side a lot of the time. So Lightning Storm really wasn't, in practice it's just more copies of Harpy's Feather Duster that you can't activate when you have a card on the board, a face-up card. So like this, on the other hand, you can use this on 2 back row against the trap deck. And once again, I like it because it's not gonna, if your opponent goes set 5 pass, it's not like activate Lightning Storm and auto win the game, because to me that's not that interesting. I think like I think counters are good, but counters that win you the game on the spot if you just activate 1 singular card, to me are kind of boring. So let's say your opponent goes set 4, set 5, you activate this, you still out a significant chunk of their board. Like you go +1 instantly, 2 cards go back to their hand, they have to shuffle back 2 cards into their deck. So that's also, well, makes it a lot better because it's not just a bounce, which would lose you card advantage, but you actually go +1 with this. even if you hit main deck monsters or back row. So I think that's good. But you're not wiping the entire board and ending the game immediately. There is still a game left to be played, which I think is good. So I'm a big fan of this card, actually. I hope this card sees play. I would rather play against this card than I would play against something like a Lightning Storm in a lot of scenarios. In some cases, it's going to be the same. You know, if let's say you end on 2 back row, and your opponent is trying to get rid of those 2 back row, it's the same thing as Lightning Storm. Sometimes even better, because it's not going to put the cards in the graveyard. It's gonna put the cards back to the deck, which in some cases, you know, let's say, I don't know, a Branded Retribution in the graveyard, that could matter. But if it goes back to your hand and you're likely putting it back to the deck, then, you know, it's not in the graveyard. So that's interesting. Goes around graveyard effects on monsters as well. If you bounce monsters back to the hand, they don't get the graveyard effect, they don't get the trigger. There's no way to protect from this in terms of like no targeting protection, destruction protection. Of course, you need to be completely unaffected for this to be useless against your card. Can out face up floodgates, can out random face downs, can out extra deck monsters. I do believe that if you bounce an extra deck monster with this, that doesn't count as a card that goes back to the hand, so they don't have to return a card. That'd be crazy. Let's say your opponent has 2 extra deck monsters, you activate this, you bounce the 2 extra deck monsters, and they have to shuffle back 2 cards from their hand. Pretty sure that's not how it works, because it says equal to the number returned to the hand, so not to the extra deck, most importantly. So in the case of extra deck monsters, you're just going to bounce the 2 extra deck monsters and nothing else is going to happen, which is still good. That's a good exchange. You know, bouncing 2 extra deck monsters for 1 spell is pretty nice. I think this card is good enough to see play, and I'm a fan of it because it feels like this is the type of thing that I feel like the side deck is good for. I just hate it when the side deck is full of silver bullets that auto win a matchup, whether it's going first or going second. You know, whether it's siding a floodgate for going first, or like deep barrier that used to be a thing, or the dimensional fissure that's still a thing, or going second like a lightning storm that in some cases lightning storm is fine if a deck is has a healthy mix of some monsters, some spell traps, and lightning storm always does something but not everything. I think that's cool. But in some other cases, like lightning storm just completely, you know, kills decks entirely if they don't have an answer to it. And I think this is a much healthier approach, and also like healthier, but could also be better depending on how the metagame shapes up, because lightning storm is much less effective on monsters than this, I think. So I like that card a lot. I really like that card. I can't stress enough how big of a fan I am of this design. The only downside I feel like is the fact that it's a normal spell, so it is a side deck card exclusive, I would think, for most decks and most formats. I mean, there's been formats in the past where people main deck cards like Dark Ruler, so it's not impossible that someone would main deck a card like this, depending on the format, but realistically, it is more likely to be a side deck staple, which is cool, because, you know, if people are using spots in their side deck for a card like this over Floodgates, I'm happy with that. Or Solemns, or like Omni Negates for going first or whatever. You know, I'm a fan of cards like this end up seeing play. But I still do think in order for cards to have, like, for healthy cards to have the maximum impact on the game, I do like if they are main deckable. And this card is not. So that's the one thing. You know, I'm not implying, I don't think this should have been a quick play spell. That would have been crazy. But maybe giving it like an alternative effect to make it usable going first, at least, would have been cool. Or something like that. I don't know. But it's cool regardless. I'm a big fan of it.